Hello everyone, this is part 11 of What If Naruto Got Rid of the Kyuubi, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. When Naruto arrived, he quickly took stock of the location and frowned. This area was one of the areas Gaara transformed into the advanced medical facility for Sooner after Tsunade agreed to have some of Konoha medics start training sooner, and then when the war started it was the location for the civilian evacuation center. Naruto closed his eyes as he saw flashes of the war between Iwa, cloud, rain, and sound in his memories. Though the actual fighting did not ever reach the village until that day, the war had raged for 5 years after the defeat of Akatsuki. He was snapped out of his thoughts when he felt the Kazekage arrive, and he looked at everyone and said, "Now that you're all here and the time has passed, I will now tell you about the second exam. As you can see, there is nothing but ruins and destroyed walls everywhere here. In this area is 20 of my Chunin and Junin who are all waiting to attack you. You may work as a team, but any member who is knocked out is then out of the competition. Each of my ninja have a red flag on them in plain view. They will keep attacking until you take the flag. After that they will stop. Only one person per team may hold a flag, so you must decide who will hold it and who won't, and you may not trade. However, if your team gets more than 15 flags, then your whole team is guaranteed into the next round. You must get as many flags as you can. Since we still have so many competitors, only the top 10 competitors will go to the finals. If we have more than 10 guaranteed competitors, then we will have an elimination round, cutting the number of finalists down to half until we have less than 10. Now there are 19 of you, we may have an odd number of competitors, and remember only 10 or less will pass. You may not K my ninja, but you may use anything you want to get the flags. Now good luck. A man who Naruto recognized as Baki walked up with Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro, who all sat down, and Gaara made some shade for them out of sand, and Baki said, "I am the official proctor for this part of the exams. Now we will begin the test based on drawing numbers," as he held out a bag. Naruto, when his time got there to draw, drawed number 19, so he sighed and waited till his turn. He watched as each of the teams started and was bored out of his mind, so he decided to get creative. He looks behind him and sees the sensei for the Iwa team looking at Naruto with narrowed eyes, and he smirks to himself, thinking the guy is going to have one hell of a headache after Naruto was done. Kurenai walked over to him and held out her hand and said, "I want to wish you luck, Naruto, and to tell you thanks for the help during the first exam." Naruto saw her teammates looking at her, and he stood up and shook her hand and said, "No problem, Whirlpool is not hostile toward Konoha or Suna." Kurenai said, "That's good to hear," and thought, "Weird, what came over me," as she walked back to her team. Naruto looked at her leave, and he pulled out a scroll, and one of his scrolls he used to fill the small lake, and he unseals the scroll as well as a bottle of ink and starts drawing more seals on it and a few new kanji, and he smirks before he sets the ink and reseals the scroll, holding his ink and putting it back in his vest. He gives a foxy grin to Gaara and his sibs, and Gaara mouths, "Don't destroy my village." Naruto then looks as he sees Kurenai team working together, getting through the course. It's not very impressive, but they do in fact get 15 of them working together as a team to defend and attack. Naruto blinks and thinks, "I never knew the closer pervert was double-jointed. Either that or H is not a man. The groin don't take that kind of position without a reason, as Eb used as a standing split like the precursor to Tsunade great leg drop, except his was from the side." Naruto smiles and nods his head to the team. They made it through all the Chunin, but the first Junin was too much for them. They go by and stand by Itachi. Itachi said, "Good job," as they arrived, and he looks over to Naruto, who does ABNU code and signs, "Have your team get behind my postern on my turn." Itachi nods slightly and watches the other competition. Naruto watches as Yugito's team goes right before him, and he sees Shush is doing all the work using lightning jutsu to paralyze each of the Chunins and the first 3 Junins, but when they got to the 4th one, he uses the Kase Bakua to knock both her teammates out and paralyze her with her own attack, but since she stayed awake she passed. Ebuse looked at Naruto and nods as he sees the jutsu and what it did, and turns to his team and said, "So it really does work. I'm surprised that we got to see it in action." Itachi asked, "What are you talking about?" Kurenai said, "We teamed up with Naruto during the first exam and he taught us that last jutsu the Sand Junin used." Itachi said, "I see. Did he tell you how it should and should not be used?" Kotetsu said, "Yes. He went into detail instruction on it. It's supposed to be a last-ditch effort thing." Itachi said, "It is. I encountered it before and it is one of the few jutsu that impress me since it can't be copied by the Sharingan." Ebu said, "Itachi-sensei. Naruto told us some stuff that seemed like he was doing more here than the exams and also like he was acting directly for the Hokage and only answered to him as well as other things we witnessed." Itachi said, "And, what of it?" Ebus asked, "Should we be worried and report what we saw?" Itachi thought a moment and said, "No, from what I have gathered Naruto action are directly sanctioned by the Hokage. Whatever is actually going on none of you are to hinder his movement or draw suspicion to him. Only speak to the Hokage about it and privately then so the wrong people don't get involved. Now we need to move back so none of us are involved in this next one." Everyone on his team looked at him funny but he ignored them and walked behind where Naruto was and watched as Baki said, "You may go when ready." Naruto nods and he sets the scroll on the ground behind him and he creates two Kyuubi that stand behind the scroll several feet and the real Naruto said, "Well, here goes nothing." The two clones began to move as Naruto took off running toward where the first Chunin was as the first Kyuubi said, "Kai." Releasing a chakra pulse making the scroll shoot several sprays of water in the air and one right into the face of the Iwa Junin. The second Kyuubi already doing hand signs said, "Sushoa, water collision destruction," making the water merge together and then take the shape of a giant wall 100 feet tall as the Kyuubi brings his arms up and then swings it forward causing the wall to turn into a massive tidal wave. Everyone was stunned at this and the Chunin and the Junins who saw the wave heading at them started to turn and run forgetting it's a test. Naruto who had already been running caught the first Chunin as he grabbed the flag running after the second, third, fourth, and so on outrunning not only the Chunins but also the wave. The reason was because most of them were already tired from other competitors and also kept looking back to see how close the wave was. The first Junin forgetting the test and was more worried about the threat of the wave on his life started making hand signs and Naruto started his own and before the Junin finished Naruto said, "Suryuden no Jutsu, water dragon projectile technique," as a dragon shot out of the water at the Junin who finished and said, "Kamaitake, cutting whirlwind technique," cutting the wave in half however he was soon hit by the dragon as Naruto passed him grabbing the flag from his knocked out body. The Kyuubi nods to the second one who had already did the same jutsu as his partner took control of the right wave while the other took the left wave continuing the path of destruction. Baki said, "My god," as he sees the way Naruto and his Kyuubi are working and Temari who was behind him thinks, "This is nothing Baki, wait till he gets serious," with a small smile on her face. Yugito was wide-eyed as both her teammates were still out as was her instructor and she asked, "How can he control water like that?" Her instructor remained quiet thinking the same thing. Gaara's right eye was twitching and said, "Remind me, did I not tell him not to do that jutsu in Tsunagen?" to his siblings quietly. Kankuro said, "Technically you did but you also technically didn't. You know he never really follows orders." Gaara looked at his brother who was amused and said, "Still he needs to have something done to him for not listening to my warning," as he left in a swirl of sand appearing on the other side of the field. Just then both Kyuubi went up in smoke thanks to a shuriken of sand and Temari who saw this became pissed. Suddenly everyone felt a wave of ki coming from Temari whose eyes both were twitching as she tried to get up only to be restrained by Kankuro and Naruto stopped his run as both his clones went up in smoke having felt the sand destroy his clones and saw Gaara smiling as they went up in smoke made Naruto turn and said, "I will get him," as he was standing beside the 18th Junin who was looking scared by the wave of water. Naruto looked at it as his clones no longer controlled it and sighed and said, "Hope you can swim buddy." As the water flooded by their location, Naruto used chakra to anchor about 30 feet below him in the sand and held his location. The last three Junins were not as lucky and were knocked out. Naruto walked over to them and grabbed the flags and looked behind him as Temari had already beat not only her brother Kankuro over the head with a mini medal fan, but was currently trying to get through Gaara's defense. Baki who had recovered from seeing such a spectacle as a giant wave of water being used in the desert and then his student beat the hell out of her brother said, "Right, you got all 20 flags by yourself. That is a new record. You will continue to the finals along with the Konoha team, Yugito, and the team from Iwa. You all have 1 month before the finals will be held at the exam stadium. You're all dismissed. Yugito said, hey, I thought my teammates would be in the finals also. Baki said, they would have if you had not knocked them out. Yugito looked sheepish as her sensei looked at her pissed. Naruto walked back to where his scroll was now shooting water like a fire hydrant and sent a chakra pulse to it to stop it and rolled it up, but he then bit his thumb and wrote on the outside the kanji for Hydra. Itachi looked at his team and said, all right. You heard him. I don't care what you do since you have 1 month free to prepare, and no, I will not teach you anything because I believe that would actually hurt you since you won't have time to refine it. I suggest trying to master the jutsu and skills you already have and try to plan for the people you saw pass. Ebuse looked at Naruto and said, about that sensei. I have a question that's been bothering me since we first met Naruto here. Naruto, who was channeling chakra into his ears to hear everyone around him, heard this and listened. Itachi asked, what is bothering you? Ebuse asked, is it possible the demon is taking control of him or something like that? His skills are way too advanced to be a normal genin. Itachi asked, please explain to me what you mean so I can understand. Ebuse saw both his teammates look at him and Kurenai gave him a look that promised pain if he said something wrong, and he said, well, look at all the jutsu H's used during the test. He summoned Gambunta, then used a hidden mist jutsu, a Raiten jutsu, created Kijibunshin, which is a Junin technique, whatever that jutsu he used before the exam to make that big crater, whatever this Kazabunshin the Kazekage was talking about, his ability to get from one place to another faster than us, and who knows what else, along with all those strange scrolls, as well as bringing water to the middle of the desert. Itachi's eye twitched and said, all right, so you think because he used weights to make himself heavier to create a crater that H is using a demon? Ebuse asked, weights. Itachi said, yes, weights. I recognize the seal on his hand as one Kakashi has to help him increase his speed, strength and chakra. You can temporarily channel some chakra into it to increase the weight a lot, like he did to create that crater, as well as how he most likely got from one place to another faster by taking the weights off, so no demon there. Now as for summoning Gambunta, I happen to have a summon contract also with Ravens, and if you happen to impress the boss summon, they will sometimes lower the amount of chakra to summon them, so I figure that is what happened here, since from what I saw Gambunta and Naruto seemed to get along really well, so no demon there. Now as for the Raiten jutsu, if you had noticed when he landed on the ground he was panting heavy, and I don't think it was from being underwater, so that means that was a desperation jutsu that he does not have an elemental affinity to, so it cost him a lot more chakra than it should, but since you all saw his the easy use of water jutsu he done, I would say he has an elemental affinity to water, and everyone is aligned to one element and some are aligned to more. I myself am aligned to fire and lighting, so no, I don't think that he is using a demon there. There is also the fact his mother was the Rasenkage of Whirlpool, and if she left his scrolls then they are most likely all water jutsu as well, so that is where he got them. As for the two different bunshins he used, I don't know, but I would guess that his father left them for him, and since he is absorbing the demon's chakra into him to make it where when he SS the Kyuubi SS, then I would suppose that he would have larger than normal chakra reserves. Now is there anything else? Ebuse sighed and said, no, I just find it hard to believe that H is so young and powerful. Itachi said, look at me. I'm the same age as you and I'm an ABNU caption, so it should not shock you. It's pretty common knowledge about me. Kurenai smiled and said, thank you sensei for straightening out my teammate here. I believe we all should listen to your advice and plan ahead for the exams. Naruto not the only ones we need to worry about, as she looked at the retreating backs of the Iwa team. Ebuse sighed, walking away, and so did Kotetsu. Kurenai was about to walk over to Temari when Itachi stopped her and said, you know, I personally hope that your teammate fails because he is a disgrace to Konoha, as he turned and started to walk away. Naruto sighed to himself and Gaara smiled, walking over to him and said, you know, people say it's a crime in Suna to get sand in your shoes, but how does it feel to have water in them? As he smirked before leaving in a swirl of sand as a brick thrown from Temari that she tried to hit her youngest brother over the head with to get him after his sand destroyed her fan sailed through where Gaara was. Naruto shook his head and back. He asked to no one really but himself, what happened to Gaara? Naruto said, too much free time. Maybe you should increase his personal training. Maybe make him run around sooner a few thousand times with weights on, as he walked back toward town. Baki asked, how did he know I was Gaara teacher? Temari said, I think I mentioned it when we all had lunch before the exam started, making Baki look at her. Baki asked, when was this? Temari said, when Gaara said he wanted ramen and took control of the restaurant downtown, as she kicked Kankuro and said, get up, we're leaving, as she started to walk away. Baki sighed and said, this is why I only wanted to teach men. You don't have to worry about mood swings, PMS, tampons, and hormones. Suddenly he felt a strong ki coming from Temari making everyone freeze, and Kankuro, who finally woke all the way up, started to back up and think, did he say the taboo word? Temari craned her end backwards looking at Baki, and he swore he saw the figure of the Shinigami behind her. He started to back up only for Temari to walk toward him slowly like a lion stalking its prey, and she suddenly phased out of his view, making him look everywhere. Suddenly he felt something that was wrong on so many levels. He would have said something had he not been holding his ass trying to remove the sandal that had just been shoved up it. Naruto, who saw this, was also backing away, and Kurenai, feeling the spike of ki from Temari, ran beside him and asked, what's wrong? Naruto said, he said the taboo word. Temari has gone into a female vengeance craze, as he was walking backwards. Kurenai asked, how do you know this, Naruto? Naruto said, I sent a present to her one time. It was a fan case for her battle fan. It was solid wood, and her brothers Kankuro and Gaara decided that they wanted to get a prank on her, so they sort of painted it to look like a giant tampon, and when she opened it at her birthday party, everyone burst out laughing. Now anytime someone says tampon, she goes like this. Kurenai sweet dropped and thought, no wonder that's a taboo word. Temari locked eyes on Naruto and started to stalk him when Kurenai jumped in front of her and said, no. Not him. Remember, we need to talk. Temari blinked a moment and looked at Kurenai and asked, what happened? Naruto said, you had another episode. You just beat Baki, keeping his distance. Temari looked sheepish and said, sorry. Kurenai said, let's go, we need to have some girl talk, as they both jumped away. Naruto turned and looked around and said, I got a brother to K, as he went to find Gaara. Gaara, who was hiding in the sand on the road Naruto just passed, thought, if father has his way, you will really become my brother Naruto. I might not K him after all, then Ajin, I can K him afterwards. Maybe help Orochimaru, nah, K the snake and father. Who says I need a demon to still love to think about king, father, Orochimaru, Sasuke. Now let's see, what to do. I know father needs some more paperwork, as he came out of the sand and took the shape of the Kazekage assistant and made the sand swirl around him and form stacks of paper and left in a swirl of sand to appear in the Kazekage office. The Kazekage blinked, and when he saw the paperwork that just arrived, he burst into tears. Gaara walked out thinking, my good deed for the day is done. It would be well after midnight that the Kazekage would figure out that the papers he were working on were fake when Gaara fell asleep, turning the papers back into sand. Kurenai and Temari made it back to Temari home, and after a quick silencing jutsu, Kurenai said, I understand now why you care for him so much. Did he ever learn the truth? Temari sighed and said, no, he never did, and I don't want him to know either. Kurenai asked, how did you find it? Sakura said, only person who knew it was the old woman who used it to save Gaara life. Temari sat down on her bed and set back against the wall and said, when Gaara was rescued, someone had to be assigned to go through all the elders' stuff, and since she was a puppet master, Gaara asked Kankuro to go through it, and I helped, and that was when I discovered a scroll containing the jutsu. I originally learned it in case I ever needed to save the lives of my brothers, but then when I saw Naruto like that, I decided to use it on him. Kurenai asked, why did you never tell him though? That's something my future self always wondered. You could have told him that you used it to save his life and cut yours in half. Temari closed her eyes and said, do you remember how I told you how he saved my life on that spy mission? Kurenai nods and said, yes, you were spying on some of Sound Nin's and got captured when Kabuto showed up at the town you were in. He happened to have been following Kabuto himself and saved you, what about it? Temari said, when Kabuto captured me, he TD'd me for several hours before Naruto arrived. I would have SD if left alone by myself, especially after he used the chakra poison on me, so Naruto took care of me and healed me back to health. That was why he missed seeing his son born, because he cared enough for me to miss that. That just solidified what I felt for him, for saving Gaara's life and also for changing him for the better. That's why when he was after his battle with Pain and Madara, I saw how his body was near death and Kyuubi was not able to heal him since he was sealed away somehow. It was because of this and the fact Sakura had ran off after Sasuke that I chose to use it and save his life using that jutsu. Kurenai asked, so what do you plan to do about it now? I'm not technically in your way now, so what are you going to do? Temari was about to say something when she heard Scalia say, you are both going to share him. Mother has already decided it. Making Temari wide-eyed and asked, what do you mean? Making Kurenai look at her funny. Scalia said, Mother has decided that since there is only 2 Uzumaki left in the world that our race will not let them out as their official partners, so she has decided that father will have at least 2 wives. Temari slapped her forehead and Kurenai asked, what's wrong with you Temari? You're acting like Naruto when H is talking to Kyuubi. Temari said, I was talking with Scalia. Kurenai asked, who? Temari looked up and said, oh right, you don't know. The dragon inside Naruto gave me one of her daughters without Naruto or I knowing it, and it's now inside of me, showing the tattoo under her shirt sleeve. Kurenai asked, what dragon? Temari blinked and said, he hasn't told you. Apparently his family uses dragons sort of like how the Inuzakis use dogs, and he recently had to take some kind of test to get it, and now he has a queen dragon inside of him. Kurenai blinked and said, so that why he has that tattoo now, as she thought about it. She then looked at Temari and asked, so what did the dragon say? Temari blushed and said, Scalia said that her mother has decided Naruto is to have at least 2 wives to help his family survive, since the dragons want to survive also. Kurenai eye twitched and said, what about Naruto opinion? Scalia said, Mother is only choosing women who Naruto finds attracted and has thought would make a good wife and mother at some point in his life. So far it's just you and Kurenai that have met her expectations. Father's opinion does not matter since he is a man and will follow the rules the woman set forth. If he does not listen to mother, she will eat him. We agree to be partners with our host, but that does not mean we are servants. It is the way it always has been. Temari's eye twitched also and said, damn it. I just had to get a dragon who was pro-woman rights. She then looked at Kurenai and said, well, according to Scalia, Naruto does not have a choice. Apparently he has to agree with the dragon inside of him on it or she will eat him. She said that the dragons are not servants to their host. Kurenai asked, what about mine and your opinions? Don't we get a say in this? Kurenai tensed as she heard a voice in her head say, no you don't. Temari asked, what's wrong Kurenai, you looked spooked. Kurenai said, Temari, how did you get the dragon in you exactly? In a weird soft voice. Temari blinked and said, I shook hands with Naruto when Diavan was in control, why? Kurenai said, I just heard a voice in my head. The voice said, my name is Avarice. I am your new dragon companion. Look at your arm. Kurenai looked at her arm and Temari said, so she got you also huh? Looks like we're both screwed. Kurenai said, Avarice, what if I don't want a dragon companion? Avarice said, you don't have a choice. If you try to get rid of me, I will eat you and then find somewhere else to live. Mother says though that she believes that you and Temari are both worthy and only upset right now because she did not ask you or Naruto for permission. She says Shush is sorry, but when you're over 400 years old you don't have patience to ask stupid questions that your soul's already done answered. If you did not care for him you would not have taken your future memories, and if Temari did not care for him she would not have begged her brothers to come back in time and blackmail them with everything she ever had. Kurenai looked at Temari and said, you forced your brothers to come back in time, in awed shock. Temari blinked and asked, how did you know? Kurenai said, Avarice told me. She said you begged and blackmailed them. Temari sighed and said, I did. I promised not to K Gaara for reading Ika Paradise and promised to help Kankuro get a girlfriend. I guess Avarice told you that she can talk to her mother telepathically. Avarice said, as well as any of my sisters. Kurenai said, as well as any of her sisters. So I guess me and you will be seeing a lot of each other in the future huh? Temari said, I don't know. Father already wants me to marry Naruto, now more than ever after his little beach thing. I found out he already made some kind of deal to arrange a marriage with me and someone that never happened before in the past. Kurenai said, a lot of things are changing, even the exams have changed from when I took them. The second exam when I took them in my past was a scroll retrieval from an outpost 24 miles away from here. This time it was capture the flags. Somebody is changing things already and I don't think it's Naruto or you guys since I already went through this life with Naruto changing things once and both my memories of this test were the same both times. Temari sighed and said, I should probably tell you that the dragons can hear your thoughts, so if you want to talk to them just think in that way, no one looks at you crazy. Also mine and yours won't be able to do more than talk and be mesangers for about a year since both are only baby dragons. It takes them a year to finally lay some eggs and then only the males will be able to be used in battle. The females don't fight, only let and breed. Kurenai nods and said, that answers my next questions. So what should we do about Naruto? I mean, do we tell him the truth that I have all my future memories including our marriage and our family life, or do we keep it a secret and try to win his heart, or what? Gaara appeared in the room with a swirl of sand shocking both of them and said, so that explains why you both have been acting weird. Temari narrowed her eyes and said, what are you doing here Gaara, and how long have you been spying on us? A raccoon teddy bear on her bed burst into sand and moved to the gourd on Gaara's back and said, since you got that black eye. So you both have a dragon inside of you and you both are going to marry Naruto. Kurenai was about to say something when the door to the room burst open and Naruto was screaming, let me go Gaara, as he was being carried by sand, and Gaara walked over and shut the door and said, not yet, first both these ladies have a lot to tell you brother, stressing brother while giving a knowing look. Kurenai said, I'm not telling anything. Gaara said, either you both tell him now or I tell him, and I won't leave out anything, including what is written in a Satian diary as well as what someone was doing when she left to use the restroom privately during the exams. Kurenai and Temari both got wide-eyed and red-faced for a moment and looked at each other and nodded, and Naruto, who was being held upside down at the moment, said, will someone please tell me what the hell is going on? Kurenai sighed and said, it turns out my future self, your wife, was afraid that she was going to soon after Arashi dispelled the genjutsu on him, so she put her entire memory in a scroll and gave it to Temari to give to Arashi when he grew up, since she would be his new mommy. Naruto blinked and asked, why would Temari have been his new mommy? In a confused voice. Temari looked down and Kurenai said, because she had learned that Temari had used the forbidden jutsu that the Sand Elder used to bring Gaara back to life on you to save yours, costing her most of her life, as well as the fact that she loves you as much as my older self did. Naruto blinked and looked at Temari and asked in a soft, kind voice, is that true Temari? Temari only nods slowly while looking down, and Naruto said, Gaara, let me down please. I'm not going anywhere. Gaara lets Naruto down and Naruto turns and decks him, sending him into the corner, and then walks over and puts his arms around Temari, who was ready to start crying, and he said, shush, don't cry Temari. Look, I realized that I might have sounded mean when I asked why would you be Arashi new mother. It's just that was something I was not expecting, and it was like Kurenai was telling me she knew she was as good as S. It hurt me to hear it, but I believe that she is right. You would most likely have been his new mother because you were the only woman besides my wife that treated me as me. That's why I could not leave you that time I rescued you from Kabuto and Mr. Arashi being born. You and Kurenai both are the only woman who ever made me feel special in a good way. You both were the only ones I could actually be myself around. I just did not know that you knew about her and me, as I thought when I explained why I had lost it after the battle that none of you knew. I hope you understand. Temari smiled and said, I understand, as she gave him a hug. Naruto looked at Kurenai and asked, and you Kurenai? I won't hold you to what me and my wife had, since I know to you it must just be memories. Kurenai smiled and said, just shut up about it. You stuck with both me and Temari now, so deal with it. Naruto blinked and looked at both women and asked, what do you mean? Kurenai rolled up her sleeve showing Naruto the dragon, and he looked and then looked at Temari before his eyes glossed over and he appeared in his mind and saw Diavan and said, what the hell is going on? Why do Temari and Kurenai both have dragons in them? Diavan smiled and said, I just gave you future wives a little extra protection along with a way to be able to send messages to you, so don't worry about it. You are going to marry both of them and like it or I will eat you and them. Now go because I'm tired. And he was kicked out of his mind. Naruto said, damn it, shush is worse than Kyuubi is. An amused snort was his answer in his head, and Naruto looked at both girls and asked, so what do you both think about this? I mean, are you both sure you want this? Temari looked at Kurenai and asked, are you sure you want to share him? Kurenai thought a moment and said, kiss him, I want to see something before I answer. And Naruto, I want you to kiss her real and mean it, please. Naruto looked at Kurenai and looks at Temari, who suddenly looked sheepish, and Naruto leans over and puts his arm around Temari's back, leaned in to give her a kiss as she slowly puts her lips together, and Naruto sees this and smirks before seeing his lips to hers and grabbing the back of her hair, pulling on it a little, forcing her to part her lips to whimper, and Naruto sticks his tongue in her mouth, and when their tongues touched, Temari tried to fight back only for Naruto to beat hers, making hers lay submissive to his exploration of her mouth. He then breaks the kiss and looks at Temari before looking at Kurenai, who was wide-eyed, and Naruto got up, walking over to her, putting his finger under her chin, forcing her to look up at him, and his lips against hers also, and she instinctively opens her mouth and lets him in, already submissive in her tongue battle, knowing she was his, and Naruto broke the kiss and smiled as he sat down and asked, well. Both girls looked at him before looking at each other, and Kurenai said, I believe you already know Naruto-sama. Naruto smiled and looked at Temari, who asked, what the hell, I mean, what was that? I mean, it was like I tried to resist, but then. Kurenai said, then you got turned on even more when he forced you to his will, right? Temari blinked and only nods, and Kurenai said, welcome to the club, sister. Turns out you're a submissive also, and luckily for us, Naruto a dominant. Naruto smiled and said, now that we got this settled and kisses are all we can do for now, what should we do about getting this arranged? Gaara, who was still holding his nose though the question was from the hot makeout session or the punch was still questionable, said, I will handle this. A few moments later a scream was heard coming from down the hall, and the door burst open, and the Kazekage was being held by Gaara-san, and he screamed, what the hell's going on here? Gaara, I demand you put me down this instant or I will. He was shut up as sand covered his mouth, and Gaara stood up and walked to his father and looked him in the eyes and said, now listen here, Kazekage-sama. I just brought you here to inform you that after carefully negotiating the terms with Namikaze-san here, we have reached an agreement where he will marry Temari when they both are of age. However, since he is also the last male of his family with 2 bloodlines, from what I have been told, he has to practice the Clan Restoration Act, so this young lady here is also going to be his wife. Now as for what you are here for, you are going to get some scrolls and docents, and we are going to draw up the legal docents that will not only help Suna and our allies but also strengthen our position of influence and economy. Now do you wish to listen, or do I have Namikaze weaken the seal he fixed and have Shukaku eat you? In a flat bored tone that could make us. The Kazekage looked around the room as the sand turned him and came off of his mouth and asked, is it true? Naruto said, for the most part. We have a few details we will have to iron out with the Hokage when he gets here to make the final draft, since I am technically a ninja of Konoha also, but yes, I have agreed to marry your daughter Temari, and before the thought of what I did to Gaara seal hits you, I will explain. I made it where he can use more of the demon's chakra without going insane, as well as being able to sleep, so that way he will be a more well-rounded shinobi in the future, just like me. As he pulled his glasses down and made his eyes flash red with Kyuubi chakra, and the Kazekage got wide-eyed and asked, are you one? Naruto said, I have the Kyuubi in me and I am in complete control as I fixed my seal like I have Gaara. I have also made it where both he and I, should we be captured by Akatsuki, that they will not get the demons, as all we have to do is send chakra to a Satian chakra hold while whipping blood across a seal, and it will kill the demons instantly, and maybe us, but hopefully not. However, there will be no other Jinchurikis of Kyuubi and Shukaku, and attempting to mess with the seal to weaken it will result in the death of everyone in 20 miles of us instantly from chakra overload, so you get the picture. With a smile on his face, the Kazekage said, you can't do this. Gaara made the sand cover his mouth and said, really, and why is that? Do you want to piss not only both your sons but your daughter and future son-in-law off, who might I not add is richer than all of Suna put together? The Kazekage thought a moment about his options and said, fine, when the Hokage gets here we will make the arrangements. Naruto said, good, now I would like to get to know my fiancés better, so if you don't mind. The Kazekage was about to say something when he found he had been shushined back to his office with 10 new stack of paperwork on his desk. He wanted to cry, but he was also scared and happy at the same time. Back in Temari bedroom, Naruto looked at Gaara and said, you enjoyed that too much, brother? Gaara said, perhaps. It will be better when HS so I don't have to act all underpowered though. I will just take over like I did last time. Temari said, in other words, walk into the council chambers and tell them that if they do not make you Kazekage you would feed them to Shukaku. Gaara said, when you got it, flaunt it. Everyone burst out laughing at this and Kankuro walked in and asked, what's so funny? Naruto said, guess what? We're getting married, as he put his arm over Kankuro who paled and said, I don't swing that way man. Temari who was holding her side said, not you idiot, me, Kurenai and Naruto. Kankuro got a glossed over look and Naruto said, that your sister man, knowing what he was thinking. Kankuro paled and said, right, I need to take a shower, as he left and Gaara said, the cold water has been shut off, after he was gone. Naruto said, you know, there are times I really think I should not have taught you to prank. Kurenai said, we should have the Kazekage not mention about this until we are all of age in 5 years. Gaara said, let me handle it, as he changed back into the Kazekage receptionist and his sand brought a coffee cup and a pot of coffee before he left. When Gaara appeared outside the door he walked in and said, excuse me Kazekage-sama but your daughter just came by and said that they do not want you talked about made public knowledge until everyone is ready for the actual event. She said you would know what she was talking about. The Kazekage sighed and nods and asked, is this the last of the paperwork? Gaara off secretary walked over with the coffee pouring a cup setting it down on the table and said, yes Kazusama. The Kazekage nods and said, those are all finished. The secretary sets the coffee pot down on the desk and reached for the finished paperwork when the pot shattered and the coffee ran all into the paperwork ruining it. The secretary said, I will take these and get them rewrote sir, as she grabbed them and left. Once outside the door Gaara changed into the Kazekage and walked down the hallway to the secretary's desk and said, these were all ruined. Please retype them and bring me some fresh coffee. My pot broke ruining them. The secretary nods and said, yes Kazekage-sama. The Kazekage walks back down the hallway and once out of sight Gaara used Shushin to leave. When he got back to his sister's room he had to leave quickly and thought, I never knew Kijibunshin could be used to please multiple women, as the sight of Naruto kissing both girls at the same time was in his head. That will be all for this video, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos, goodbye.